So what comes across my desk now? Had a question. It was asking my opinion about gentle parenting versus spanking. And here's what I believe. I don't believe that we can exist in a world where we say that different methods of teaching is required for different kids because different kids learn and respond to different things different ways. So we have to adapt our lesson plans that's more suitable for their unique identity, but then try to say that one way of parenting is suitable for all kids. That's what I believe. I believe it has to be a balance. So let's say with spanking, do I think that all spanking is bad? No, but I think over correction, like over spanking, is bad. When you are taking out your frustrations on a child, if you pick up a child and repeatedly, striking them out of anger, hitting them all over the place, throwing stuff at them, stuff like that. Yeah, it's too much. I think there's a time and a place, depending on the situation. I'm not a big spanker, but when my kids were younger, let's say between 0 and 4 or 5, yes, there were times when they did things, I might pop their knuckles, you know, let them know, hey, that's what I said. That, but normally it's after I've said something more than one times, and I try to reposition them. You take stuff. It doesn't always work, especially at that point in time. Their brains don't fully understand reason and logic. So yes, I might pop their hand or thump their knuckles. Like I said, it's not every time. I don't think that should be a default. Like every time you get mad at your child and they do something, you resort to hitting. But do I think it can be effective? Yes, at the time and the place, circumstantial, because that's life. Life isn't always gentle. Life doesn't always try to apply reason and logic to you and get you to understand certain things. It's very much trial and error. So when they reach the age to where they could better understand what I was saying, then yeah, it's more talking, more punishment, more other things like, okay, because when they reach a certain age, even though I wasn't spanking them that much, like I said, most of the time it's knuckle popping. I'm not big. I wasn't big on belts and switches, and I think that that's a form of abuse. I do think that that you probably shouldn't do that per se, but school days, you have a little ruler, pop the hand. Hey, look, little gentle, hard correction is what I would say, and that's just because growing up, I got a lot of whippings. I got them old school whoopings where you in there, nothing but your underwear, belts, paddles, stuff like that. Sometimes might have been too much. I didn't grow up to be aggressive. I was a non-aggressive child. I didn't really like to fight or none of that stuff. What made me aggressive wasn't my parents. It was what I went through in society, what I went through with other children, being picked on, talked about, pushed around, and then you reach a point to where you wake up one day and say, "Hey, man, I don't want to take this." So that's what made me become more aggressive. It wasn't because of my parents. It's because the things I went through in society flipped a switch one day. One day I went to sleep one way and I woke up the next day and I was a different person. There are plenty of successful people out here that have had spankings or what we would call corporal punishment that turned out fine. Everybody's going to have problems. I don't think that if someone has problems, you should just automatically associate it. Oh, it's because your parents spank you. That might not be it. You know, if that's the case, like look at the military. When you're in the military and you mess up and you do something wrong, they don't just pull you to the side and talk to you. They don't just take privileges. When you play for a sports team and you mess up, coach doesn't just sit you in the office and talk to you and say, "Hey man, I need you to understand logically why this could affect the team and we could lose." Yeah, you understand all that stuff. But if you're still not getting it right, or if you're still displaying behavior problems or whatever else, you have to also show them there's consequences. So at one point in time, my kids might move from, okay, you get in trouble now. We're gonna do a little exercise. Come on, do some push-ups, sit-ups. We're gonna do extra chores. Because I believe that mirrors life more um true to nature at face value. Life doesn't logic and reason with you a lot. So a lot of times when you mess up in life, it's gonna come through some form of punishment, not just a loss of activities or losing things. In life, you mess up, you get punished with hard labor. When I made certain decisions in life, I got punished as far as having to work certain jobs for X amount of time because I couldn't do anything else. Having to work hard. I made financial mistakes. I had to go to work and work harder physically. That takes a toll on you. So I started teaching my kids, hey, you mess up in life, sometimes the consequence you're going to pay is physical in nature. So, like I said, let's go outside. Let's do this work. Come on. Clean up this room, clean up that room. Okay, now we finna go here. Now you're gonna lose your stuff because life is complex. You don't always just lose one thing in life. You can lose privileges and still have to work more. You get it? So I think that from a psychological standpoint, let's just say there have been studies that were done that young boys that watched a certain type of program were 50% more likely to be aggressive during the next 24-hour time period. So let's look at these young boys that's growing up in situations where it's a combination of things. You might be getting spanked by your parents, but it might be too much, and you're watching aggressive television, and you're listening or exposed to aggressive music around your parents, and you go out in society and the kids around you are aggressive. And so you're feeding and learning from all of that. I don't think it's just one thing. So to sit there and say, "Oh, it's because you parented like this," I don't honestly, I just don't think that that's always the answer. I think that sometimes you need to be a gentle parent. Sometimes you need to be a hard parent. I'm not an advocate for, as I mentioned, getting switches and belts and just beating kids all over the place and popping them with your hand across the back and bruise. I'm not for that. See, there's a difference between, um, like corporal punishment or physical punishment and then abuse. And I think a lot of times when people hear physical punishment, they automatically assume abuse. But no, when my daughter was 3 years old and she still was intentionally using the restroom on herself and trying to hide it and other things. Yes, there were times when she come to me, I was just fuss at her, talk to her. But then there was some times when I had enough, I say, give me a hand, ball up your fist, give her 4 little flicks. It hurts, but it was more so to hurt her feelings than to just make her feel away, make her super aggressive or anything else. There are people that gentle parent and their kids turn out aggressive because they may have been too gentle. You know, everybody doesn't have good logic skills. You're trying to apply logic to your children. You're not a logical person. So the information you're giving them is not suitable for the environment. It's not suitable for life. You know, so if a person out there says, well, I didn't spank my kids and they turned out fine, if your kids are 10 or 12, that's yet to be determined. They really they haven't even gotten into the meat and potatoes of life for real, for real. And if they did turn out good, okay, that's good. You did what was required for your child and they turned out okay. But at the same time, it wasn't just your gentle parenting, it was a collaborative effort. Like you might have watched more, paid more attention to what they watched on TV or what they listened to when they went to school, especially if they were homeschooled or when they went to school, they may have been in an environment that was more suitable to them, so they didn't have to deal with some of the things that other kids deal with that really put them in that mind frame. But when you come from certain conditions and your environment is a certain way, I think that at times it takes different types of correction. So I don't think that we should get on the line and just try to demonize people that pop their children. I think we should look at it on a case by case basis, individual. If this person applies physical correction to their child, I need to see, okay, what did it consist of? Because if you just told them to hold out their hand and you had a ruler, you just hit them 2 or 3 times, not trying to break their hand or nothing like that, but just enough to, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get mad at you for that. Now, if you used to take their hand and twist it and bend it up and you wham it on them, yeah, see, that's two different things. Just like with gentle parenting, you could be gentle, but then you could be too gentle. Parents that tend to be too gentle or too lax, or they try to talk to their kids too much and try to reason with them too much. Those kids, yeah, okay, I understand. There are kids that can get put on punishment and it don't phase them. I was one of those kids. I have a wild imagination. So my parents could put me on punishment and they can take my Nintendo and whatever else. They can take my Ninja Turtles and anything else I like to play with. I'm in there with a notepad and I'm drawing. I'm tearing out the paper and making action figures with the paper. You come in there and take the paper. I said, okay, well, I got my fingers. I'm out there playing on my fingers. I'm action figure doing the karate chops with the fingers. I didn't turn my finger. You can't take my fingers. Then I'm in there whistling to myself. I'm staring at the wall, creating stories, telling myself stories like I'm watching TV. I had a very vivid, there are some people like that you just couldn't. I'm the type person that I could thrive in one environment, one room, and have nothing around me, and I'm okay. Like, don't. You took it, okay. I'll do my little time. Guess what? When it's over, I'll be back. I'll be back because I'm gonna do what I want to do. That's why I said that depending on the environment and the child, because children have different personalities. So, like I said, if we have to tailor our educational methods to children and make it more suitable to their identity, then that's the same with punishment. And it should be, in my honest opinion, a mixture of different things. And if you find one way that works for your child and that's, it's a good plan, okay. But if the next person finds a path for their child that does not involve abuse, people think that just because you don't hit your children means that you're not abusive. You can be gently abusive. So don't think that, oh, I don't spank my children, that you're not. It's up here. And let me tell you something. What's up here, it heals a lot slower than being physically hit. You be physically hit, you might cry in the moment. The next day you over it. You might be over it later on that day. But if your parents say certain things and they repeat certain things into you, some people, you don't hit your children, but you call them stupid. You call them idiots. When you talk to them and you reason with them, you talk to them in a manner that makes them feel inadequate. You're talking down at them. So what all is this gentle parenting? And then you have to look at your structure. A person that's rich or has certain things set up and their children aren't exposed to whatever, or they have the resources, they might be able to better afford to be more gentle parents because they can take their children out of certain environments or pay for this or pay for that or whatnot. So they're at a better starting point. Someone that's having to fight with the effects of the environment and whatever else, that's a different brain. That's a different mindset. And I've been on both sides. There are some kids and some adults that will tell you they needed that hard correction. They needed that. When I was a supervisor, we had to learn kind of how to tailor our style of correction depending on who we was talking to. I had some people that I could talk to very much like a coach. I can get in their face and say certain things, and that's what they responded to. I say, okay, I can talk to him like that because that's what gets him going. And when I get in his face and I say, sir, like, hey man, what you doing? I can talk very direct, very grown. Yes, sir. Okay, yes, sir. All right. And he good. You got some people, you got to kind of dumb it down a little bit. They baby made. You know what I mean? And by baby made, I don't mean it as an insult. I mean they're more infantile, like they're more soft in the brain. They don't respond well to that. So it's let me figure it out. Okay. But now this dude right here, the one that likes that hard coaching, you go to him being all gentle and soft, he's not gonna respect you. He's not gonna listen. He's like, yeah, whatever. That's something that you have to learn, and that's how kids are. Different kids respond to different way. When I coached football, when I coached youth baseball, I coached youth sports for a while. Different athletes responded to different tactics. So I can't go out there and just be a gentle coach all the way around the board. No, 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 no. And so the conversation really needs to be more so, how can we blend these different methods of parenting, or how can we find the correct plan for our kids? Right? And in those situations when people are overly abusing their kids or using physical methods that are not suitable and are contradictory to what you're trying to do, okay, we should address that. But when you put a label out there that basically says that all spanking, no physical punishment, it's then you crossing lines. Then you setting a lot of people up for failure. That's what I don't like. I don't like the whole no kid should ever be spanked, whatever, under any circumstances. Now, I don't believe in that. There's a time and a place. Like I said, when my kids were younger, at a point to where they really couldn't understand logic and reason in words, that was the language that they understood. Sometimes after I say no so many times and you get popped, okay, now you stop. Now you see I'm mad. Now you see I'm angry. But a lot of times when I would pop them, I wouldn't fuss and I wouldn't cuss. I don't yell at my kids like that. So even though I might pop you on the hand, I'm not popping you and cussing you out and yelling and screaming at the top of my lungs. It's a very controlled thing. Say, hey, I told you not to do that. Give me a hand. Okay, got. Now I told you to stop. So it was a little bit of both. A little bit of physical correction, yes, but I'm still in control of my anger and I'm not just lashing out. I told you not to do that and blah blah blah. And you gonna listen to me? Because I think that upsets kids more than anything. A lot of times, there's plenty of times that you don't have to hit your kids, but if you yell at them a certain way, that can have the same effect. Because from a psychological standpoint, yelling at people and words trigger the same receptors in the brain as being physically hit. So you're gonna get the same response whether you know it or not. A lot of people don't know that. Look it up. Psychologically speaking, that words and phrases and how you speak to someone, saying things that upset people, it can trigger the same responses in the brain, the same receptors as pain and stress. That's a fact. So we got to look at all of it. Look at the whole spectrum and try to figure out, hey, how can I maneuver around this parenting thing and create a game plan for my child? It's not too much of this, not too much of that, but it works. Because as long as you have people out there that have become good citizens and products of environments where they were spanked or popped a little bit or whatever else, and they are okay, don't try to assign trauma to them because you want them to be traumatized because you found out that they got spanked or popped. And so now everything that's wrong with them, you try to bring it back to the parents. And that's not fair. They've been through too much life. They've been through too much life, you know? So that's my thought on that. We'll talk about it more in the future. But as for right now, I just want to answer that question. And that's how I feel.